I'd like to welcome everybody to the April meeting of the Atlanta Radio Club. We have a great program again tonight, thanks to our wonderful activities chairman and program manager, Rob, KI4UTY. Just real quick, I'm going to let Jeff Clarke is going to give us a little talk about the upcoming Georgia QSO party. So if he's ready, let me go ahead and throw it away to him, and then Stephen will give us a very quick repeater update, and then we'll hand it over to the activities program chairman for tonight's meeting.
Okay.
So, Jeff.
And I was just going to share my screen here. Let's see. Okay, actually, that's not what I wanted. Hold on a second. Okay, here, we'll do this. Okay. Alrighty. Well, as all of you might know, maybe some of you might not know, is that the 61st annual Georgia QSL party is in 2 weekends. Not this weekend, not Easter weekend, but the weekend after. It starts around noon. It starts at noon on Saturday. Goes till midnight on Saturday, and then starts back up at 10 a.m. and goes till 8 p.m. on Sunday. And we're hoping for a lot of participation from Georgia. Actually, last year, since I've taken over, was the highest number of logs that we had ever received. I think it was something like 700, a little over 700 logs, which took me a while to process all those. So I guess I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the rules for this year, because there are some things that have changed. One important one here is in the multi-operator categories. If you remember last year, we allowed a multi-op to operate from more than one location in the same county, and we're going to do that again this year. So say your club call W4DOC, say there's someone in Fulton that wants to operate from his station for a while, and then you can switch over to somebody else to operate, and there's no limit on how many stations. But the important thing to keep in mind is you can't work people over again when you switch whose station you're using. So you're going to need to find out a way to network your log. And then also for this year, we've added a portable category, because we realize that some people don't want to stick ugly mobile antennas on their car or scratch their nice car. So we have this portable category that you go out, you operate just like someone that is a rover would operate and go between different counties. And instead of using mobile antennas, we ask that you put up, some type of temporary antennas, like a push-up mast or something, and you can hang a wire or something off of that. And then when you're done in the county that you're operating, you just pack it all up and go to the next county. So I would think with 20 hours available during the weekend, it would be pretty easy to do a lot of counties. Let's see what else
we have. You step back for a second and just describe the contest, would you?
Oh, you mean the actual Georgia QSO party?
Yeah, what it is in case.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's I guess you could call it a contest, but some people, just like to use it as a club activity. And basically the object is for people from outside of Georgia to work Georgia stations. And then for Georgia stations, you can work anybody. And basically you come up with a score, the number of contacts times the like for if you're outside of Georgia, it would be the number of counties that you worked. So you could work 159 on sideband, 159 on CW. And then for Georgia stations, kind of works the same way, except you don't count the Georgia counties for a multiplier. You count the states that you worked in, the Canadian provinces. I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Let me unmute here. Yeah, it does. I put something in the blurb about since people from around the country are trying to contact Georgia, that it's a good time for us in Georgia to be on the air because everybody's going to want to talk to us.
Right, exactly. And with the COVID still going on, there's a lot of people that are still at home. And, you know, if you do contesting, you'll notice in the past year that the activity has been higher than normal because everyone is stuck at home. So, you know, if you're a station in Georgia and you call CQ or something, you're probably going to get a pile up of stations that want to work you, especially if you're in a really rare country, really rare county. Everyone will want to work you. Okay, so we went over, let's see here, went over the rules. A lot of the rules now are back to where they were before before COVID came along. The only exception really is the multi-ops being able to operate from more than one location. And basically that's it. I can answer any questions that anyone might have.
Were all the counties covered last year, last 2 years maybe?
I don't know that we've actually ever had all the counties, someone from out of Georgia work all the counties, because it would be very hard to work all 159 Georgia counties on sideband and CW, because a lot of the people that go rovering or mobile, they'd like to do CW. But if you count, like, say, someone out of state, how many counties they worked between sideband and CW, there have been some people that have come pretty close, you know, in the 140s, maybe close to 150 before in the past. But last year, since we didn't have any rover stations because of COVID, no one even came close.
Yeah, if you can describe the rover, how that works.
Okay. Well, basically what a rover is that you put a mobile antenna or antennas on your car, and you drive around between different counties. So say, for example, I'm in Harris County. Say I start in Harris County and I work a bunch of people in Harris County, then the rate kind of slows down. Then I can go, say I'll go to Muskogee County. So when I go to a new county, I can work all those people over again. So if you do a lot of counties, you know, if you do 30, 40, 50 counties in Georgia, you'll be working all these people over and over again that want to work you, because they're trying to get as many counties as they can. And I know in the past, K4BAI and I go out mobile as W4AN, and there were a couple times that we made over 2,000 contacts during the weekend doing a rover. And there's John here, K4BAI. This is a couple pictures from maybe a few years ago or a couple years ago that we went mobile in Georgia, and we just kind of set up something in the backseat of the car, and
we're not seeing that. We're seeing your notepad.
Oh, you're seeing my notepad. Oh, okay. Let me see what's going on here. Let me see. So you didn't see any of that stuff on the web page. You just saw my notepad, huh?
What stuff?
The web page when I brought it up.
No.
Yeah, you didn't see that. Let me see. Okay, here we go. Here's the website. Okay, so here's a picture of John, K4BAI, when we went out a couple years ago in his car, and you can see the mobile antennas that we stuck on his car. And Actually, the Georgia QSO party URL has changed. It's now gaqsoparty.com. It used to be another URL, but if you go to that one, it'll redirect to this one. So anyway, any other questions?
Is there a lot of 2-meter activity during the contest?
No, there's no 2 meter at all. It's only from 80 meters to 10 meters.
Thank you.
Do we have
Yeah.
to report our contacts?
Well, you can send in a log, yeah, but I mean, you can still participate and not send in a log if you don't want to. But if you'd like, to send in a log, you can. I don't know what programs you guys use for logging. I personally, we use N1MM Logger Plus. I know N3FJP is a popular logging program. You could use either of those. And then there's a format called a Cabrillo file that you need to send the log in as. Those programs will allow you to create that file. And then that's where you, on the log submission page here, that's where you attach that file to submit your log.
And you're going for awards.
Yes, we have awards. In fact, you guys sponsor an award.
We do.
You sponsor the top club score in Georgia. I think you've actually done that for a while. Oh, and I forgot to mention, we've actually, because basically the North Fulton Amateur Radio League was winning that plaque just about every year for Georgia, we decided to add the top small club score for Georgia. So that is for any club in Georgia that submits less than 10 entries, because it would be very hard to compete against them. They usually have a lot of entries every year, and they were winning the plaque every year. So we decided that we wanted to sponsor another plaque for that. But if you go to the awards page here, it shows, all the different plaques that are available. There's we're up to 34 plaques now. So there's quite a few. And, there's for CW only, or multi-op, or phone only, or high power or low power QRP, and so on. So there's a lot of different plaques. And if you're a person that likes to collect plaques, some of these are unclaimed every year. And the only thing about winning a plaque, you have to make a minimum of 50 contacts. But if you're in Georgia, that would be real easy to do.
Do they have to be two-way contacts? So if someone talks to us and they log it, that's sufficient? You don't have to
Well, yeah, you have to make a two-way contact, yes.
But I mean, do we have to log them for the contact?
Yes, because
For them.
to be eligible for a plaque, you have to submit a log. So you have to submit a log to us to be eligible.
But if we're not going for one, but
if you're not going for one, that's great too. I mean, I know a lot of the clubs in Georgia, they're not serious contesters at all. And they like to use this as a club activity, kind of like very similar to field day.
That's our plan, right?
Yeah, because I know there's a club up in, I'm trying to remember, up by Dalton or something every year. And that's how they, that's, I think they're called, or no, Barrow County, I think the call is WR4BC. And they use this as a club activity every year. So it's a great activity for your club, other than field day, to get together and you can have fun just like you do field day, which might be fun this year because a lot of people didn't do field day last year. I think maybe it might be a little bit safer now.
No, that'll be fun because we're doing, right, we got something coming up in the park for that, John?
Yeah, I was going to tell everybody to kind of stick around after the presentation, and we'll give an update on what the club's doing. It'll be a day in the park in Dunwoody, so we'll be doing something as a club that day on Saturday.
Yeah, and even if you do it as a club, you can do it individually as home as well. I mean, what the calls your club calls W4DOC, which I assume that you'll use, in Dunwoody, and then say that you go out there and operate with the club a little bit. Get on from home too. I mean, the more stations that are on from Georgia, the better for people that are out of state, because, because it's 20 hours long. When you get to the second day, for the people out of state, it can kind of get slow for them. And that's why we like to have a lot of rover stations, because that keeps the activity up, people chasing the rovers as they go between all the different counties.
Yeah, the person organizing ours, KB4KFT, yeah, he's going to do, he's going to work with us at the park on Saturday, and then Sunday, yeah, he's going to go out, rovering all over the place.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, the more the better. The more the better. That's I've been doing QSO parties for a while. I'm actually originally from Ohio, and I ran the Ohio QSO party for a while. I took over the Georgia a few years ago, but I had done it one time before, and then I took it over again. So I know what it takes for your QSO party to be successful, and one of the most important things is to have a lot of rover stations to keep the interest up from out of state. It's very important.
Can you speak to the impact of what happens yearly when other states are having their parties on the same day that we do?
Actually, the weekend that we're having it, I don't believe that there's a lot of other QSO parties going on.
There's four states that weekend, according to the thing that came out from the ARL today.
Yeah.
North Dakota, Nebraska, and New Mexico.
Yeah, yeah. Well, none of those have nearly the activity that we have in Georgia, so I don't see that it would be a problem. I mean, if you had a QSO party and you were running it the same weekend of, say, the California QSO party, which is probably the one that has the most activity of any QSO party, might not be good for you, but actually there's a lot of people, there's a lot of popular QSO parties that have theirs the same weekend, and the QSO parties are really popular for the guys that do county hunting, and so you can count on those guys being on for every QSO party. So even though there's another QSO party going on the same weekend as yours, they're going to work you, and they're going to work the other ones too. So it's not going to take away from your QSO party at all. Anything else?
Anyone?
I have a comment with that.
Okay, go ahead. Mike.
Yeah. Mike Smith here, KK4KHS over here in Stone Mountain. Several years ago, my wife and I happened to be camping at Skidaway Island. I'm sorry, not Skidaway, but right down from Savannah, the other little federal park.
You mean Tybee Island, maybe?
No. I'm sorry, Bryan County.
Oh, Bryan County. Okay.
Yeah, we were at the federal park there, Bryan County, and I went down there and activated that county because no one had signed up to activate it. And it happened to be the weekend of the Georgia QSO party. I hadn't done much HF operating. Maybe I did some back during POTA. I mean, in POTA. But that was where I had my first pileup. And as a new general, and no one taught me about what a pileup was. It did indeed have a high pucker factor. So it was a great great time for me to learn what a pileup was. And I would encourage anyone who has never experienced what a pileup is when everybody's trying to get your county that you're in to participate. It's a great learning experience, and the QSO, the Georgia QSO party is so fun because we learn, you know, like if we're from our home or if we're from our club area, we learn the different times of the day, the different locations in the state on the different bands that you can actually operate. You know, it's not like 8 o'clock Sunday morning, you're not going to be getting many people on 20 meters unless it's ground wave. But just had a great time, and I know it takes you guys a lot of time to do that processing of the records and upkeeping the website. And you know, we as hams appreciate what you do. That's it.
Well, thank you very much. It is a lot of work. Although I've written my own program in Visual Basic to process the logs, so that makes it a lot simpler for me, because when I took over, I really wasn't handed anything. Nothing was really handed to me to do that. So you know, I had to kind of start from scratch. But yeah, you're true. You're absolutely true what you said about pileups. I mean, if you've never, like, say, operated from out of the U.S. in a rare country or the Caribbean, I mean, the pileups that you get in the Georgia QSO party are very similar. I mean, and it gets, if you like that kind of thing, it gets very, very addicting that you got to go out every year. Actually, John, K4BAI and I, we, you know, besides Georgia, we go out in Florida. Every year we also usually go out in Alabama as well, and we're using W4AN, which is the Southeast Contest Club call sign. And this year we went out in the South Carolina and North Carolina, and a couple of years ago we went out in Tennessee. So we've actually gone out mobile in all the states surrounding Georgia, and it can get very addicting. It's a lot of fun, lots of fun. Oh, and I might mention that we've started to have Zoom meetings for the Southeast Contest Club. We're going to have one this coming Monday, and so if any of your club members missed this, they're invited to call in to the Zoom call that we're going to have for the Southeast Contest Club. That's going to be on April the 5th. And we're going to have that at 7 p.m. So I can, let's see, Rob, do you want me to send you the link? Could I send you the link for the Zoom call for that? Okay, I see you shaking your head. Okay. All right. Well, we went a little bit longer than 15 minutes. You know, it's funny. I mean, we had our very first Southeast Contest Club Zoom call last month, and, you know, we were going to maybe try and keep it to, you know, maybe an hour and a half or so, and I think we ended up going 2.5 hours. So, and a lot of it, we were just chatting, you know, a little beforehand, a little bit afterwards, because the Southeast Contest Club, I don't know if anyone in Atlanta Radio Club belongs to it, but it's more of a not a club that really has in-person meetings. So, you know, it's been basically an internet-based club. And I mean, I've been in it since I've lived in Georgia, which is about 2002, 2003. And there's a lot of the club members I've never, ever met in person. And it was kind of neat to see their face.
Yeah, well, I hear about them through SEDX. You know, they mention.
Right, exactly. Which is also one of the sponsors of the Georgia QSO party.
Yeah, send me the link and I'll make sure it gets posted.
Okay. But again, we appreciate you guys sponsoring the top club score in Georgia. I know you guys have, I know you've done it since I've been running it, and probably even before then. I think K4BAI told me that at one time the Atlanta Radio Club ran the Georgia QSO party, and I think he took it over from you guys.
So you took it over from Norm and you did better. Now Norm's leaving the state.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah,
Oh, okay. I did not know that.
he's moving to Huntsville.
Oh, really? Okay. I think the last time I saw him was when N4PN passed away, and he was at his funeral down in Macon.
Norm's a good guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we sponsor the club, the top club score, and I think Norfolk appreciates it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, we appreciate it too.
they have a bet with GARS. Whoever wins, whoever loses has to bring the other club ice cream for everybody.
Oh, wow. Well, that's even better than a plaque. But this year, you know, we're going to have the small club award. And you know, the smaller clubs will have a chance, you know, to win a plaque. So we're hoping that I'm hoping that, and plus the portable category will help more people get on, because if you operate from home, you know, if you do a lot of hours, you might start running out of people to work. But if you go portable and just kind of set up a temporary antenna and go between different counties, you can keep the rate up pretty good, like a rover station does. So when all those people worked you in Bryan County and you ran out of people to work, you go over to Chatham or something, or one of the other counties over there by the coast.
No, that should be fun. Yeah, you just get on there and you call, you know, CQ Georgia QSO party, and everybody starts, yeah, coming at you.
Yeah, yeah.
Good.
Well, I think the best way, if you're inside of Georgia, it's better for you to call CQ than to go around calling people, because you're not going to find a lot of people outside of Georgia calling CQ.
That's where you get the pile up, right? Everybody trying to get to you.
Exactly.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll be there. John will talk about it later. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Jeff. Thanks very much for all that you do for the QSO party and the ham radio community in general. We're looking forward to our day in the park, and I'll talk more about that after the presentation. Before I turn it over and let Steven's got to jump out, we've obviously been having issues with our repeaters, so he's just going to give us the Cliff Notes version of what he's done and what we're working on. So, Steven, I hope you're awake and still with us. Take it away real quick.
All right, thanks, John. So basically the 2 meter repeater is still running in standalone mode. So that means no Echo link, no Southeastern Link repeater net, and no linking on the Sunday night net. We're hopeful to get one of the Vertex boxes that we have modified to transmit the proper signal to the repeater controller. And hopefully that'll be done within maybe the next week or so. Then we can hook up the Vertex to the repeater controller and bring back all the features we lost. But we haven't had the kind of noise issues that we've been experiencing lately. So that's definitely a good thing. And that's really it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Stephen. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to once again, our illustrious and very handsome program and activities chairman, Rob, KI4UTY.
Yeah, I had my picture taken today for driver's license, and so it's going to look like this forever. I'm going to have to keep this on here. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, so we had 2 programs tonight, and you know, I was thinking about the QSO party, and I was trying to come up with a program that would go with it. You know, we're going to be out in the park. We haven't been out in the park in a while. I guess we did for the winter field day. So I was trying to figure out what to come up with, and I was reading about the NanoVNA, and I've got a NanoVNA, which is still in the box. But that's something, since we're going to set up antennas in the park and try and get things working. You know, Bill, KB4KFT, he doesn't need an analyzer. He can just look at it and tell you how it's doing. But for everybody else, being able to stick an analyzer on there and it'll say your 20 meter antenna is only resonant on 40 meters, you know, and you got to change the length to get it where you want. It's all very, very, very helpful. So figured let's talk about NanoVNAs. It's a great test tool. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lee Johnson for our program. Who hopefully you're still here, Lee.
Yep, sure am.
Go ahead, thing.
Okay, probably the best thing to do is go ahead and share the screen here. Hopefully, hopefully you got the first slide and everybody can see it okay. My audio going to work all right?
Looks good, sounds good.
Okay, good, good. Tonight I wanted to share what I've learned in the last 18 months using the NanoVNA, and also at the same time I've been spending a fair amount of time with some NFED antennas. I don't know if any of you know Steve Ellington, who has a Facebook page with about 13,000 followers on Facebook, as opposed to IO groups, has been a disciple for NFEDs for about 3 years now. And so I've gotten into winding my own 49-to-1 transformers and things like that. But it's been an interesting road, but I can tell you that it's certainly been a lot easier having a NanoVNA in your pocket. So my objective tonight is to get you familiar enough with the NanoVNA to see how you might have specific uses for it, and also to show you some popular measurements and to convince you that it may end up being the best $50 you've ever spent. Okay, here, let me see if I can't get these slides moving. There we go. First of all, thanks for the invitation. I've been back active for a few years. I started out as a young ham, 13 years old in Hawaii during Sunspot Cycle 19. That's a nice place to start your ham career with a cycle like 19 going. I don't think they make them like that anymore. I was also a founding member of the Raleigh Amateur Radio Club in Raleigh, North Carolina, and built the W4DW repeater, the 0464 machine there. Retired after 40 years of being in the high-tech world. I'm a double E from the Citadel and Duke, and enjoyed the high-tech world for 40 years, but I'm glad to be able to shut it down and walk away from it. So I live in Marietta in East Cobb, and pretty active, getting more active, I should say, on the HF side, a little bit on VHF, and been playing with the SDRs and homebrew antennas. And so that's just a quick introduction. Tonight, we'll go over the NanoVNA, a little history, bring you up to date with the latest product developments, bring you current with regard to where they stand on the product lines. We'll focus on the standalone use of the device, but well, and including its design specs, several examples of the most common measurements. And I'll also try to introduce some of the external computer software programs that are available that provide helpful references for your use to get into the device. Software packages have come a long way. The real trick is getting the NanoVNA to a point that it's you got muscle memory to help you out. For those of you who've heard of the NanoVNA being complex to operate, it's only complex if you don't have the routine built. And once you have the routines built, it's a little bit more than an SWR bridge, but it gives you a lot more for your effort. So we'll walk through this quick agenda. And here's what I'm working with. I started building, I live in East Cobb, and at the very end of Lower Roswell Road. So I've got a backyard that's a side street, but it gives me good tall oak trees to work with. My off-center fed dipoles at 65 feet, and my in-fed, the yellow one there, is also at 65 feet. And I've plotted there the radiation patterns for the NFID, the yellow antenna. 40 meters is blue, 20 is green, and 10 is red. So that gives you what the lobes look like. And then there's a little bit of a chart on the left-hand side there that gives you the nulls, because you know, with more, once you're above the fundamental in frequency, you end up with lobing on the antennas. But I really wanted to try to make good coverage into the US from here, the Southeast, and also focus on Europe and Australia and New Zealand. And so that's worked out pretty well so far. This is just a satellite view of the lot. And I was just able to get the off-center fit in there with the help of my next door neighbor's oak tree. So it worked out okay. I'm in a HOA neighborhood, so I had to hide them as best I could. And so far I'm getting by with it. One of the Hamfests, before I got these antennas up and really got started again, I was looking for something to do antennas with. And I borrowed the club's MFJ antenna analyzer and soon realized, you know, starting with a brand new lot, a brand new 7300, ICOM 7300, and new antennas, not knowing a lot about the transformer mechanisms and how the NFEDs work, I needed a little bit more help getting into them. And I really knew that I needed to be able to optimize the homebrew side of the antenna construction, and had never done an NFED before. And about the same time, about 18 months ago, the NanoVNAs came along, and I was able to ride that pony, and it came across helping a lot more than I thought. NanoVNA really is just, the term is a small vector network analyzer. And, you know, what is a network analyzer? You know, how is it different than some of the other stuff that you're dealing with to tune the antennas? Basically, it measures the magnitude and phase of the reflection and the transmission properties across the frequency spectrum. And it's a two-port device. So you can actually measure a filter, look at the loss, look at the sine, look at the skirts, and tune the toroids along and actually see it in real time. And basically, a network analyzer, a vector network analyzer, since it does phase, is an instrument used to characterize RF devices, both passive and active. I'd like to give you a sense of scale of the increase of measurement capability now available to you. Consider the analogy between a NanoVNA and a cell phone, okay? Look at your single purpose SWR meter. That's a lot like the early cell phones that had fairly, you know, small set of features. The NanoVNA is a lot more like a smartphone. It's got that kind of capability, and at 50 or 60 bucks, you get a lot for your money. The commercial VNAs, like the one on the left, are got a lot more functionality, a lot more capability. They're still typically two-port devices, and they're in the 150 to 50K range in price. The middle one is in the last few years, people have started to build cheaper versions, and ham club versions, and ham clubs have gotten together and built projects. And the last 18 months or so, you see the NanoVNAs on the right. This is, by the way, almost to scale, just to give you a sense of size. The good news is you really don't need all the capability and precision that is available in the professional instruments. For instance, you don't need 100 dB dynamic range to tune a 40-meter dipole. But you'll be surprised at what you get with the NanoVNA. Again, a vector analyzer, if you look at the source up there, you can actually, it's got a generator built into it, a wide span generator. The first ones came out, they did about 900 megahertz, 50 kilohertz to 900 megahertz. The new ones are up to about the 3 gig size. So you've got a generator in there, and you can actually send that signal into the device under test, which could be an antenna or it could be a through device like a filter. And on the front end of that, you've got bridges that will allow you to look at the waveform or the signal going into the device, and also the signal reflected from that device. So you can look at forward and reverse SWR or other things we'll get into as we go along. And then if you're looking at a 2-port arrangement where you're looking at a filter or an amplifier or a piece of cable or something like that, you've got a bridge on the output side, and you can look at the through loss or frequency response. And then you've got basically the filters, the receivers and detectors, and the processor and display. These things have taken advantage of the cell phone parts, the SDR parts, and so you got a convergence of things like the new technologies, software coming along, the hardware that can do a lot more than you ever thought possible. You got open source software and hardware coming from guys who are just sitting down trying to build something that they know how to build if they spend a little time doing it. And it blew out in the open about 18 months ago, and it's still evolving. Here's a list of the measurements that you can do with the NanoVNA. It's just a handheld, low-cost vector analyzer. It's kind of like an RF multimeter, and it'll measure electrical parameters of antennas, filters, and components to 3 gig. If you look just at the single port, S11 means that it's port number 1, both an incident going in and also reflection coming out. So a forward and reverse SWR, you can look at the complex load impedances, like, is it a 50 ohm resistive impedance, or has it got a reactive component that you have to tune out with a tuner? You can get a very good idea of how to tune. You can intuitively tune a tuner looking at the Smith chart on a NanoVNA, because it tells you which direction you're going in and how fast you're moving. You can look at return loss. You can look at cable impedance. You can look at feed line length, distance to a fault. You can look as a time domain reflectometer sort of arrangement. And then for transmission, you can look at a filter response, splitters, balance, phasing networks, amplifier gains. And you can, so it's a pretty capable device, and it's available for $50, as they say. It's really, last year it was kind of the Geek-Toy of the year. And it's the one on the left there is the one I've got, and it's, I'll hold it up here. This is the one I bought and put a small case on it. By the way, these are the connector savers. They're just, male to female kind of connectors you can just put on top of the SNA connectors, so you don't wear them out, because they don't have the gold plating on there. It's not all that thick, and if you keep screwing the loads and the opens and the shorts on here for calibration, you're spinning the pin inside the connector, and you'll end up wearing the gold off. So just a hint on that. The next one is the unit that I bought from Amazon. I spent a little bit more for it and was able to get a good device. That the only thing I've had trouble with was the battery. I took the cover off of it. You can see it on the right-hand side of the slide there. And if you look at where the VNA came from, a Japanese ham named Eddie 555 in 2016 built it as a kit and started to push it as a kit, an open source hardware and firmware at GitHub. And it was based on a design by WG8SAQ, and it's shown in the March-April 2017 QAX magazine. The Chinese picked up on it and started cloning it and flooded the world with them. Some of them are okay, some of them are bad, some of them are flaky, and they're a little tricky. But another ham, this one in China, took over and made a business out of it. And the H models are his model. And first thing he did was took the original and built it as a respectable clone, extended it to 1.5 gigahertz, sorry, and has moved to the 4-inch screens. They're now going up to 3 gigahertz. The SD card is coming along in these devices now. Didn't used to have that. And so you can record the screen images and into some of the touchtone slides, touchtone protocol, I guess it's called, or format. And you start to see the tiny spectrum analyzers coming along with similar kind of form factors and price ranges. And as of today, the best option for a NanoVNA, I think, is probably still the Hugen H4 model. It's a 4-inch, shows up on the screen here. And it's $60 from, oh shucks.
RNL.
Yeah, RNL, thank you. Now, I've never bought anything from them, but I think I will based on the reputation that they've earned cleaning this field littered with units that don't work from the clone guys. I won't go through the detail here, but this is what the VNA looks like on the inside. Most of these parts came from other applications. So you got a microcontroller in there, you got a audio to digital codec and a analog to digital converter, and mixers and oscillators and clock generator. So it's a fairly simple block diagram, but what goes in those devices is something to behold. Here's a schematic. I won't spend any time on that, but if you look at the boards, you'll see mostly chips and a few components on there. Here's the H4 specs. It'll go to 1.5 gigahertz. It's got basically a 1 milliwatt output. Dynamic range at the low end up to 300 megahertz is about 70 dB. And at the high end, it gets down to about 40 dB, but that's still plenty of room to operate for dealing with most everything except tuning a duplexer or diplexer might be a little tough with this thing, especially at the high end. Got a USB interface. It's got a decent sized battery in there. The battery used to be about 1/4 that size. The downside is it's only got 100 points of data that it can display. That's not so bad, but if you think of 100 points over 30 megahertz, you start, you can't see the 40-meter band. Your points are on either side of the 40-meter band. So what you end up having to do is to, once you take a look at, let's say, an HF antenna that's multi-band, take a look at it over all the 30 megahertz. Then if you look at each individual subband, take a 40-meter band or 80 meters, you still got those 100 points you can click along. And so you can get the resolution that you need. If you use some of the software that goes on top of the device, you can raise that number of scanning points. But to be honest with you, I haven't spent a lot of time on the software. I'm a Mac guy, so I haven't dared venture across that boundary too much. But I haven't found a lot of application that needs to go that far. This thing's nice and stable. You can use it as a signal generator if you need to. And here's what the device looks like. and what the user interface looks like. It's got a small learning curve, but the user interface is quite capable. If you look at the device on the left, you see the USB port, the battery LED, the power switch, the LED, another LED at the systems level, and then a multifunction rocker switch, which is a little tricky, but once you get used to it, it works out pretty well. And then if you look at the screen, you'll notice along the top, you see a lot of, see the 1, 2, 3, 4 across the top. That's just a map to what's down below. And it's like, you know, which channel are you on? What format are you running? What scale you're running? And what's the values? You can actually get markers on here, so you can actually mark the edge bands. Then on the bottom, you see the start and stop frequencies of the spectrum that you're taking a look at. So that's what it looks like. On the right-hand side, you got the screens as they pop up. And the first screen you get is the one on top there, and it shows you display, marker, stimulus, calibrate. My eyes aren't as good as they used to be. Recall and close. And that allows you to go through the menus, set your traces up, set the formats up, set the scale, and look at what channels you want to operate those bridges on. You can move them around. You can look at functions. You can actually search. You can start and stop the frequency stimulus for looking at a particular, let's say a 40-meter antenna, or you can set it at 7 megahertz and have it with a 1 megahertz spread either side. So you can set it up 2 different ways. Then you got a calibration set there, and don't let that scare you. A lot of people get confused by how complex they think and that you have to calibrate every time you use it, and that's not the case at all. The second screen down on the bottom is once you start drilling down into needing a number pad, it pops up and you can just input your data that way. And usually you can just use a stylus. It works out pretty well. Your fingernails will work, but it's a little tight in there on a small screen. I've got the small screen. I haven't gone to the 4-inch screen yet, but I wouldn't recommend the small screen, but it'll do the job. The next slide gives you a chart done by a software guy. It doesn't show you how to do SWR, but it will tell you if you really think about it. If you look at, I think you can see my arrow, right? Okay. If you look at that, that's the beginning screen that you start with. And if you want to look at the display, you go to trace, and then once with trace, you pick out which trace you want to operate with. So you can see how you can go down the tree and get to what you want to. Once you kind of get through realizing that you don't have to memorize this because you're not going to do but 3 or 4 different kinds of measurements, and you get enough muscle memory that you can hunt and peck around. It's not too bad. It's really not too bad. As an example, before you start, let's say you're going to start, you're going to check SWR on your antenna, and you want to check each one of the bands of a multi-band antenna. You'll need to configure what traces you want. Do you want SWR? Do you want return loss? Do you want reflection coefficient? You want a Smith chart? What do you want? What kind of format do you want? Whether you're going to use, port 1 or port 2, which is the other name for channel 0 or channel 1. What scale you want to run on. You can change the scale just like you would on an oscilloscope. It's fairly easy to do. You can set reference positions. You can set the frequency range to whatever you want. And you calibrate the NanoVNA. Once you do the calibration, let's say on 0 to 30, and you want to look at your antenna just to make sure the rain didn't take it out, you might want to start there. I found if you calibrate 0 to 30, you can operate on each one of the bands and not have to recalibrate for the level of detail that we're looking for. You can also set up the calibration and recall the setup. On the newer ones, on the old ones, you couldn't do that. You always went to calibrate. One calibration was all you had. Now you have 4 or 5. So you could set up each band. And then once you got it set up, you don't need to recalibrate by turning it on and off. You don't need to worry about that. One of the best guides I found to give you background and a sense of what is this thing and how do I get my arms around it is this absolute beginner guide to a NanoVNA by Martin Splacco. And he's listed in the references on the end of the slides presentation. So you can get to it. And pretty much everything on here is up to date and on the web and is easily searchable. Here's the calibration, and I'll just spend a quick second on this. If you look at the red arrow in the middle, it's pointing to a C. And if you read, if it's a capital C, that means you're operating in a calibrated domain, frequency range, whatever. And you don't have to recalibrate. But if the C is small, you're outside the calibration range that you can depend on for, the ultimate in precision. To be honest with you, I've never really felt in trouble switching back and forth and didn't feel like I had to recalibrate because you go through the step of you have to put on an open, a short, a load, and have the machine reset itself. And once you go through those 3, then the machine has taken all the internal errors out and put them on the side. So you've got a calibrated device that is set up for 50 ohms. You know for sure that when you see a Smith chart, 1-to-1 SWR, it's going to be right in the middle. So it's calibrated, and you'll be pleasantly surprised at how good the graphical display really turns out to be. Okay, let's take a look at the device. I have 2 videos in here of the NanoVNA measuring my NFED multiband antenna. And what I'd like to do is to, let me go ahead and get it started here. You'll see it wiggling just a little bit. With this demo of the VNA, you can see how to make SWR measurements, and you'll see some of the controls and menus of the unit. Here's a 50K to 30 megahertz SWR sweep of my 40 through 10 meter NFED antenna at 65 feet. You'll get to know this chart pretty easily. 1-to-1 is is the bottom of the chart. It's the bottom boundary. 2-to-1 is the first line up. So you see most of those SWR numbers, like the one is marker number 1, is at 1.04. It happens to be at the 6.9 megahertz instead of, so it's outside the band. Here's the 40 meter band. This spread is from 6 to 8 megahertz. And you see number 1 is the lower end of the band, 7.0. Number 3 is the top end of the band. And number 2, which should have been in the middle, is the resonant point. And in this particular case, it's outside the band. But you'll also notice that even with that, it's still less than 2-to-1 across the band. And this is the worst antenna I've got so far as SWR is concerned. We'll take a look at the 20 meter antenna portion, or antenna operating at 20 meters. And this again goes from 13.5 to 14.5 megahertz, so 14's in the middle. And it gives you an idea of what it looks like. And we'll go to 20 megahertz in just a minute on 15. By the way, the bottom trace, the yellow trace is SWR, the top trace is return loss. Okay, and return loss gives you a better view of the resonant point. It's a more sensitive measurement, but you're really measuring the same thing. The math is a little bit different. If you look at the next one coming up will be 10 meters. But you look at the SWR on that, and it's well below 2 to 1 across the 15-meter band. By the way, the null points here on return loss are so precise that I had to change this presentation because we had a cold night snap and I was working at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I got up and I didn't get to it till noon the next day, and my my notch had moved because the antenna had stretched a little bit, and I was surprised that was that sensitive. But that's the degree of that you can look at the deep valley with the return loss that you can't see with SWR very well. And now I'll add a Smith chart on top of this. For those of you familiar with the Smith chart, you know 50 ohms is right in the middle. And if you stay in the middle circle, you're within less than 2 to 1 SWR. Okay, they're concentric circles of SWR. And this gives you an idea. If you look at 2, it's right dead on in the center, and that's 49.8.9 ohms and 1.63 nanofarads in the upper right-hand corner. So this thing will give you the impedance in both real and imaginary terms and show you what it looks like graphically. You can look at the markers on the graph, and you can also see the numbers up there, 28.65 and then -1 megahertz off that for the marker number 3. And if you look at the SWR up there at marker number 1, it's, I'm sorry, at marker number 2 on that one. Yeah, that's SWR 1.06. And the return loss is, I think, about 29 dB. And that's pretty good return loss, as you might expect. I'm an old engineer, so return loss to me is how I cut my teeth in the engineering field in telephony. So I'm a little bit more used to that term. So I don't mean to throw one on you here, but I thought it might be a useful term just to give you a sense of what you can do with it and the precision you can get with it. Okay. This demo, we'll go into it a little bit more detail. And let me get it started again. If you look at the 40-meter band, we'll set the stimulus and go through the menu and show you how to set it up here. Just use any kind of pointer. Set the stimulus and just 6 megahertz, 6M. Hit the stop side. You want to go to, let's say, 8. There's 8 going in. And so there's a SWR curve, and you can move that cursor around and see the frequency in the upper right-hand corner. So there's 7.3. So there's the 40-meter band. And you can move it around and see what you want to. The SWR there's 1.65. And then we'll add return loss up here. Display, pick the trace up, pick up the magenta trace. That one's a little noisy because it's got a receiver sitting on there, so you got to turn it over, turn it around. And a few more steps and we'll be there. And go to channel 0. So now it's looking at the reflection. So again, it's a bit more precision to work with. You can, you'll notice again, the resonant point of my 40-meter antenna is outside the 40-meter band. But it's 65 feet up, and I'll work on it next time I need to get up there. The nice thing about this is that with this in-fed antenna, I can operate the 7300 with no external tuner. In fact, I don't even use the internal tuner. The in-fed is that good of an antenna. I've been pleasantly surprised. So I'll raise my hand for the in-fed. As you see, you can move the cursor around, and the markers follow each other because you're just moving in frequency. And so you see each one of the plots move along, and you can check your SWR across the band and pretty much run it around the way you want to. Okay, we'll jump to, here's my off-center fed dipole. It doesn't behave quite as well as the in-fed, but there's a plot from 50 kilohertz to 30 megahertz. And there's the 80 meter, 40 meter, and 20 meter plots. Probably can't read the numbers, but the plots are wider than the bands, and I didn't put the markers in there, but the yellow triangle markers are the center parts of the band. Okay. Here's a 40 meter dipole. You can see it's got a lot sharper response type to the SWR frequency points. You can see the 40 meter resonant point and also the 15 meter resonant point there. And then the curve on the Smith chart. The yellow curve is the SWR curve with the markers marking 7.0 and 7.3 respectively, and the middle marker is the minimum SWR. And the same frequencies are marked on the Smith chart green curve there. And you can see that on this one, it is at 7 point, looks like 7.4. It's 23 ohms and 23 nanofarads reactance. So you can get down and look pretty closely at the antennas. Okay, here's a comparison between the NanoVNA and the ICOM SWR graphs. If you look at the green lettering, I've overlaid that on top of the screen capture and have noted the null points of SWR in green along the bottom. And you'll see the #1 marker there sitting at that's a 1.08 SWR, but it's at 6.9 megahertz. Okay, and if you look at the chart of the 7300, the graph on the 7300, you'll notice that at 6.9, sure enough, it's a 1-to-1 SWR. Okay, and it goes up from there, as you see in the graphical chart on the 7300 top one there. If you take a look at the 10 meter one, on the right-hand side, it's 1.1 SWR at 28.6. And if you look across at the bottom SWR graph on the 7300, that's pretty close to what that looks like. You see the same null point with the graph on the 7300. So that's I thought a good way to show you quickly the comparison between what you can see on the NanoVNA and your 7300 or whatever else SWR meter you're using. Here's a combined one. This is an in-fed at 7 megahertz showing SWR return loss and Smith chart. And you can see the actual values on the upper part of the screen up there. SWR is 1.03. The Smith chart says it's 48.5 ohms and 24.9 nanofarads. And this is all at 7.04 megahertz. And why is that not at 6.9? I think Temperature didn't move it that far. That must be the other end feds, what that is. But you'll notice that the SWR shows you, if you look at the upper left-hand yellow letters, it says channel 0, SWR 1, and that means each one of the lines, horizontal lines going up, is another integer step up in SWR. So the bottom one is 1 to 1, the second line is 2 to 1, third line is 3 to 1. But you can change that scale to make it a quarter of an SWR unit per, or you know, a half or whatever you want. I just left it at 1 because it was easier to keep track of it. On the magenta one, the cyan one, I'm sorry, it says it's a log magnitude scale, and it's 10 dB per scale per division. So that number 1 cyan marker is sitting at 35 dB return loss. But again, you know, you could count up from the bottom and get to 35, 10 dB per scale. So you can set those scales to anything you want. It's just a nice way to show you up on the top of the screen what the actual real numbers are. And you can just move the cursor around in frequency, and those numbers will they'll be in real time, and they're really quite accurate. Okay, here's an example of a 2-port measurement. I took a Bandstop filter, 88 to 108, that I use on an SDR to keep the FM band out of it. And here's a plot. You can see the frequency response here with the notch, and that's about 60 dB down. And here you see the return loss measured as well. So you can actually look at a filter like this and get a pretty good idea of what you're dealing with. And this is the plot with one of my unit that I took the picture of to get to this one. And this is just added the Smith chart on top of it. One of the bad things about the NanoVNA is that all the graphs are overlaying each other. And the nice thing about using the external software, you can separate them into separate graphs. They're not overlaid on top of each other. So a lot of people, you know, once they get used to it, they just pick the chart they want and turn the rest of them off. So you can turn them on and off. You can just take any one of those you want to look at, turn the rest of them off, and look at that one, and then flip and look at one at a time. So that's one application that's different from SWR. Here's another one. If you want to measure the radiation pattern of a VHF antenna, you can do that with a range in your backyard. You take the VNA and a piece of coax and a small antenna, and you can actually use the VNA as the generator, and it'll see its own signal coming back. And you can actually plot by turning the antenna. You can plot the radiation pattern in real time in your backyard. So there's another example of how you might want to use it. It's tough on a 40-meter beam, but here's another one: time domain reflectometer. You can actually see a bad joint on a cable. You can see where the balun is. I found a bad balun with this thing because I had a brand new off-center fed dipole, and all of a sudden one day it was only resonant on 40. And I'm wondering what's wrong with it. It was after a storm. Well, it turned out one of the leads inside the balun had come loose. And with the VNAs, you know, you can look and see where the fault is. Let's say a wet connector down the coax. You can tell where it is. It's called time domain reflectometer. The optics guys are really familiar with these on fiber optic cables. That's how they find the breaks on fiber optic cables. Okay.
This will also find a break.
I'm sorry?
So if you've actually got a break in the cable, it'll show that too.
That's right. That's right. Or if you leave it open, it'll tell you where the end is. Here's a NanoVNA Saver software. And as you can see, the graphs are separated, and you get the detailed printouts of all the coefficients and results. It'll give you touch tone files, which I'm not familiar with, but it looks like some kind of a format that is common with VNA devices. And here's the listing of what kind of features and functionalities you can get with those external software. To me, I wouldn't want to take my my Mac outside anyway. So using the device is outside. The only problem is the screens are a little tough to see in the sun, so you got to worry about that problem. But most of us are used to that problem anyway on our cell phones. Okay, here's a series of sources and links that I hope might be helpful to you. Introductory videos. Try to pick a good one. The Groups IO forums, user guide, the one I talked about before, the Absolute Beginner's Guide to NanoVNA. It's a good, well-rounded, long, deep document that you can use as a good reference point, and that version 1.6 is the current version. There's a YouTube NanoVNA done by W2AEW. He does a pretty good job. The NanoVNA Saver guy, Rune, does a nice job explaining what you can do with the NanoVNA Saver software. And then if you want to learn how to do a Smith chart, if you're not familiar with those, there's a reference to take you down that path. Here are the two Groups IO pages that are on Google, I'm sorry. The first one is the original device, and that was the first one that was started. The second one is the later device, which is a different, I won't say architecture, it's a different design. It goes after higher specs and goes after higher frequencies. I mean, you can imagine trying to get 60 dB signal noise ratio at 3 gigahertz on a printed circuit board that's pretty small. Is not an easy thing to do. But these groups are pretty good. There's an awful lot of information there, and they're wide open throughout the world, and it's a good place to start if you really want to get deep into it. But the references will get you there. But if you have problems, there's good question and answer in these IO groups. And then in summary, basically you got a software-defined RF tool that's pretty powerful. The functionality is continuing to expand. The architecture is open, and it's easy to get to. The software, the firmware. People are now downloading new firmware without blowing their devices up. The user groups and YouTube videos are quite helpful now. And the best US source, like we said before, is R&L. They'll support the purchaser. And instead of $50 on eBay, you can get it for 60, and you got a good US source. So I don't have any connection to them, and I don't certainly get any cutoff of it. But the people I've talked to who've gotten them, nobody I've talked to has gotten a bad device so far. And the H4 version is the one I'd recommend because it's got the 4-inch screen, and it has the new updated firmware and hardware. And a bigger battery, by the way. The battery's about 4 times larger. By the way, here's my test question. Can any of you tell me what kind of an antenna that is? If you think about it, notice the broad frequency range it covers with SWR. That SWR is less than 2 to 1 to 900 megahertz for most of the graph. It's got a little bit above that for part of it. And the Smith chart shows you right in the middle. So, it confirms the SWR is staying tame. And this thing goes up to 900 megahertz because I don't have the 1.5 gigahertz firmware loaded. Anybody tell me what kind of antenna that is? It's a disc cone antenna. Okay. So you can tell a lot about what kind of antenna you're hooked to by what these charts look like. And it's been a fun journey for me to get up to speed on this thing and get to a point I can feel comfortable with it. So any questions anybody got that I can try to answer?
Lee, what type of interface did you use between this device and say connecting to your antenna? Was that some home brewed things, or did you buy something for that?
Actually, I have a drawer full. There's find where the camera is. There's a UHF to SNA. So you can buy them directly off of Amazon. And I bought these things here, which are just basically through devices. There's a small SMA connector, and it's pretty fragile if you think about it. It's a PC board edge mounted small connector. And if you take a big UHF connector hanging off this thing, it's a little tricky. So what I've done, and what most people have done, now that I think about what I didn't bring out of the closet here, is basically use the cables that come with the device. There's a small cable, okay? And you just stick that on the VNA and then stick the adapter. Here's an example of an adapter that is, where'd that one go? Here's an adapter that's basically a UHF to SNA. And there's a BNC in between. So you can buy these adapters. They're, $5, maybe $8. And then you gotta, see, somebody's got some of these things. And so that's what I did. I just used the small pigtail so I don't break the connector solder joint in there on the printed circuit board. And it's worked out pretty well.
I think Bob NZ2Z was trying to show us his cable.
Well, the nice thing about the device is you can take it outside and hang it on your antenna. And you're not carrying around something that's worth $500. It's worth $50. And what's the worst thing that happens to it? You drop it off a tower and you got to go buy another one. It's not the worst thing in the world. And I've been fortunate so far. I haven't broken the connectors yet. And oh, the one thing I didn't say, just a quick thing I forgot. On the unit itself, you don't need to use the stylus to do the moving around on the menus here. Here's a rocker switch on top, and you can actually move the cursor around and then get it up here. But you've got to be pretty good with that. And then you can use your finger to move it around. Okay, you can do that, or you can use a stylus. I've just found the old Palm Pilot style styluses work great, but you can't operate it from this device. You don't need to have a stylus. You can use your finger, but the 2.5-inch screen, it's kind of hard to. You get fat fingering pretty quickly. But it's easy to adapt. The only problem you got to worry about is breaking the connector on this, and the newer cases are better, and they've actually, I think, extended the connectors to the metal part of the case rather than just laying them on the edge of the PC board, because that's all this is the PC board with the edge connectors inside a plastic case that just wraps around it. So it's pretty fragile from the standpoint of torquing it and breaking the connector, but I haven't done it yet, and I've been running this thing for 18 months. Inside and outside the house, and I've dropped it probably 15 times. So and it'll go for probably an hour, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours on a charge. So you got plenty of time to work on the antennas.
Do they upgrade the firmware?
Well, yes and no. The answer is you have to upgrade the firmware, but they are upgrading it and adding to it. A good example of an upgrade is they've changed the frequency spectrum that you cover from the original, not actually 300 megahertz to 900 megahertz to 1.5 gigahertz to 3 gigahertz. That's certainly a firmware change. They've also gotten new layouts, have gotten more sensitive, so they've got more dynamic range to work with. And they've changed, for instance, the calibration. You now have, instead of just one default set of calibration points, you can have 5. So you can actually take each one of the HF bands and calibrate it and have it set to come up on, let's say, 40 meter band if you want to work on your 40 meter antenna, or come up on, let's say, 50 kilohertz to 30 megahertz calibration point, and already have it calibrated and not have to redo it again. So they've made changes like that. And they've added, search in there. Let's say you want to find the minimum SWR on your 20 meter antenna. You can just tell the marker to go look for the minimum, and it'll run over and find the minimum and tell you what it is. That won't, I can't do that on this one. And also the time domain reflectometer is not on the original. You have to get the H4 or H2.4 model to do that. But the firmware, basically, you just have to short a couple pins together and download the firmware on the USB port, and you're back on the air again. I've not done it yet. I've not been gutsy enough to try that, because some of the horror stories are pretty bloody early on. But it's getting a lot better, and the notes in the groups IO pages are a lot better than they used to be. You can tell who's been doing it for a while, and some of the YouTubes are right and some of them are wrong. So it's a little bit tricky, but once you learn how to do the calibration and you learn what you're doing with your antennas, it's an easy device, and it's pretty forgiving. I've been pleasantly surprised.
I've got a question then.
Sure.
2 questions. Yeah, the one that you bought on eBay was not NanoVNA brand. I guess it would look like a NanoVNA, right? It was. Are there?
I don't know. There is a NanoVNA brand.
Or because you'll buy something like RNL says something that they say is NanoVNA, right?
NanoVNA is the generic term for the small device that was originally done by the Japanese engineer. He coined the term NanoVNA. There are probably 100 clones, all called NanoVNA, that are made by different people, and maybe not necessarily to the same exact schematic. Okay. So the RNL device, I think, comes from a reputable manufacturer. I don't think RNL makes it themselves.
Okay, yeah, that's where I bought mine. So if you get the H4, you get what they sell. Okay, of all the clones that are out there, they're selling one that, they're selling a reputable box.
Right, exactly. If I were buying one today, that's the one I'd buy, because I don't need to go above 1.5 gigahertz right now. And that's the only real difference in some of the newer ones coming out, is the higher frequency range.
Yeah, I noticed that it'll compute your cable's velocity factor, or your antenna's velocity factor, which really helps for measuring antennas.
That's right. That's right. And this one won't do that because the firmware didn't have the time domain kind of capabilities in it.
The last question, out of the box, do you have what you need? Like, for instance, the UHF connector, the SMA to UHF, does one come with that, or do you have to buy that?
No, one does not come with it. Basically, all you get, and well, here's my box. Here's the box. Okay, and there's 2 cables in there, and by the way, I suspect these are slightly different. but most of the ones I've seen so far come with a pair of cables like this, and these are looks like about 1 foot cables.
SMA, okay.
SMA. And then you get the calibration devices here. These are the, it's an SMA connector with a 50 ohm load on it in it. Here's an SMA connector that's open, and here's one that's shorted. And those are the loads you use to calibrate with. So you get those. And then you get, I think that's it. Yeah, I've got some SMA barrels and things like that I bought later. But you basically cannot hook it up to an antenna without the adapters that you buy outside this box. So you need to get the adapters.
I need to do that. And then you say you add a stylus. You can just get some kind of stylus.
You can use your finger. You really can. Or you can use a pencil. It's a stylus, hard point kind of stylus thing. So your fingernail will do it, or any kind of stylus you got, or a ballpoint pen, but it'll leave a mark on the screen that you have to kind of clean off. But it's not. It's a pretty rugged device if you just handle the connectors carefully. And I've been real pleased with it. And I have yet to find it wanting with regard to accuracy or precision. And I've tried to compare it against some known good instruments, and I've been pleasantly surprised.
And you just leave yours turned on all the time to the antenna? Because you said, the temperature changed, your...
Yeah, I was surprised. I looked at the temperature change and I realized how much the temperature had changed. And I thought, what's the thermal coefficient of that length of piece of copper? And I worked it out real quick and I'm going, that's about 19 degrees. Okay, I got that. And that's exactly what it was. The notch had just moved over a little bit. And it didn't move a lot. But
yeah.
I was surprised.
Can you measure other than 50 ohm cables with it?
Well, Smith charts are normalized at 50 ohms. And you can, let me think about it a minute. You could probably do it with 75 ohms and not worry about it too much, but I wouldn't go too far off that. And with 75, most of us are using 75s to for a tuning stub or something like that conversion. And you'd see the effect of the 75 in what it does for your SWR. So yeah, you can certainly, if you have an antenna that's got 75 ohm coax in it, you can certainly use the NanoVNA. You might lose a little precision on the Smith charts, but most of us don't use the Smith charts anyway.
The antenna's not going to be necessarily 50, right? As you say, some of them are 450 with the 9-to-1 Baylin. And
yeah, there's a chart. There's a load board right there. Kind of, you can put devices on that and measure what you want to. It's amazing. There's a real industry that's popped up around this thing, doing all kinds of pieces and parts. Does that board have the actual components on it as well?
Yeah, it has little small inserts. It comes with a cable.
Okay.
With very tiny inserts. Let me see.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
With the very tiny inserts.
Right.
That you stick in there. I haven't gotten it working yet, but now that I've listened to you, I'll get some rebuild some interest in it. I used it once to test my 220 antenna getting into the club repeater, and
okay.
I haven't used it since.
Well, like I said, there is a little bit of a learning curve, but my intent was to get enough excitement about the potential value of it to get you who are interested to climb that learning curve. It's really not that bad.
Question,
and
when you want to calibrate, can you just calibrate what do you calibrate just a TX? Use the 50, the dummy load on a TX side to calibrate it?
there's two levels of calibration. One is if you're going to use it as a single port device, okay, like looking at the SWR of an antenna, you only have to calibrate using the open, short, and 50 ohm load. You don't need to go through it or isolate it, which is the last two steps in the calibration. If you're going to use it as a two-port device, like measuring a filter, well, you want to make sure you go through all seven, I think it's 5 steps of the calibration, including the open, short, 50 ohm load, isolation, which means the open, and then the through connection between port A and, the channel. They mark these channel 1 and channel 0 instead of port 1 and port 2. Who knows why? But so you only need to use if you're going to measure something that requires a through calibration, like looking at an amplifier gain or frequency response of a filter, you need to go with all 5 steps of the calibration procedure. But if you're going to look at just a single port on, let's say, channel 0, that'll give you SWR and return loss and things like that. That you only need the first 3 steps of the calibration curve.
But if you do all 5 steps, you're good for a while. You don't have to keep recalibrating it, as you said.
Well, the calibration basically takes out the fixed error terms of the actual device, and those aren't something that age. So once you calibrate it, you shouldn't have to recalibrate it. It won't drift out of calibration.
Okay.
It's as manufactured, kind of, make sure it's all zeroed out.
Okay.
It's kind of like a bridge. Once you zero it into and zero the bridge out, then you're okay for a while. But actually, I've never recalibrated mine except just for fun to check it out and make sure I didn't need to. I've never seen any difference in the performance of the device using the calibration.
Okay.
Okay.
Other question. I think it's one of the programs, NanoVNA, I think it is. I believe they save a calibration. Do they save a calibration file in case something? What happened is I had it calibrated when I first bought it, and then a buddy used it and was trying to do something, and then went to recalibrate it, and ever since then I've not been able to get it to work. So my question, after tonight I'm gonna go and do the 5-step calibration. But I think my question is that on the software, does it save a calibration file in case my buddy comes and screws it up again? I can always go back and get the settings.
Yeah. If you look at, well, let me back up. It depends on which one you have. Do you know which one you have?
I got the old one.
Okay, you got the same one I've got, the old the small screen.
Yeah.
That only has 1 calibration memory location.
That's all I need, I think.
Well, that's the way most of us are. And that will not be affected if you go ahead and recalibrate it, and it will automatically store that. And when you power it back up again, it'll come back up with those terms stored and ready to use. You don't have to recalibrate it.
Okay, thank you.
But I would, since your buddy may have changed the calibration of it, you might want to go back and just, as you say, do a recalibration, and I think you'll be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Especially if you're just going to stay in the HF range. If you're going to go up to 1.2 gigahertz and also work on 80 meters, you might want to think about it a little bit.
I'm going up to 2.5 gigahertz.
Not with that VNA.
Oh, how only 1.2?
Well, you said you had the old one. That's only 900 megahertz.
Oh, okay. Well, all right. I'm not going to invest in a new one until I get this one working.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have fun with them.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I've got a buddy stick or buddy pole, whatever, and it's got the coil on it that you have to tap.
Yeah.
So what I was wondering, and it seems like if I set up the NanoVNA, then I can just rate, I can take the tap and I can rake it down. If I want to set it up for 40, I want to figure out where in the coil I set it for 40. I could just rake the thing down and we'll just watch the NanoVNA and I'll,
Yep.
that work out well.
Now, it might throw a lot of noise as it goes between the turns,
Mhm.
you know, but if you can just wait till the noise settles out, and it settles out pretty quick. The screen will scare you if I mean, think about it. It's a static crash, right? And so once you ignore that a little bit and get the time constant to help you out, yeah, it's an easy tune. The main thing is just make sure you got the frequency set right, because one of the things I had to learn on the NFEDs was, you know, I might not be starting with my resonant point inside the band. It might be outside the band. And the nice thing about the VNA is you can tune it to, let's say, you know, 5 to 8 megahertz, and you can find that resonant point there someplace on that coil as a starting point. And as you get closer and closer, but if you use return loss instead of SWR, you can get a much more precise point.
Yeah, I'll bring it to our QSO party and see if I can play with it there, and we can all play with it and see.
And you know, by the way, my email address is leemanhjohnson@gmail.com. If anybody wants to, LEHMANH.Johnson@gmail.com. And I'm on the QRZ page, and my email address is up there as well.
Oh, thank you for that.
Okay. And I'll be happy to, if I can answer some questions offline, I'll be happy to.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. With my luck, my finger will add capacitance to it, and when I get it set the way I want, and then I take the finger off.
Your finger will certainly add capacitance to it.
It'll change. Thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you, John.
My pleasure.
Appreciate that. Great presentation.
All right. Thanks, Lee, for a great presentation.
Sure, enjoyed it.
Always nice to have another toy in the shack. So.
Well, thanks for the invitation, and it is a great toy, I must admit.
I'll send you the link to the video.
Okay. All right. I appreciate it.
And one to you and Jeff.
Thank you very much, and of course, thank you, Rob, for hauling in another good presentation.
I found another good one.
Yep.
Good.
All right. It's what is it? 8:40. Wow, 8:49. We had a good night tonight. Not a whole lot on the business side for the club tonight. Stephen had mentioned that we're working on getting the repeater back into shape. We're getting there, so bear with us. We've still got some work to do on the D-Star also, if you use that. And one thing we did realize in this whole process is that we need to grow our repeater committee a little bit. We realized that we were probably outnumbered against our tasks at hand. So if you have an interest in the repeater systems, or have an interest in participating in that, please let us know. We're going to probably be doing another talent survey here soon, because that's one of the things we realized, that we haven't done one in quite a while, so we don't know who we can call on to help us with different tasks in the club, especially when it comes to repeaters. So if you have an interest in the repeater system, let us know that you'd like to be a part of the committee. You don't have to be an engineer from Georgia Tech. Obviously, it might help a little bit, but it's not rocket science. So please do let us know if you have an interest in that.
Tower is good.
What's that?
View from the top of the tower.
Yeah, I mean, if you get on the list to go up to the tower, it's a great way to get up there to see another side of Atlanta. So it's I've never been up. I'm not sure I could walk out that door, but it's neat from the picture. So that may be a chance for you to get on the tower list and actually go up. So think about it and let us know. You can hit president or vice president or treasurer or secretary at atlantaradioclub.org with an email and let us know. Georgia QSO party, like we mentioned, the club's going to get together at Brook Run Park in Dunwoody, which is off of North Peachtree Road. It's about, I don't know, a mile and a half north of 285. It's in that Peachtree Corners, Dunwoody area. And we'll be back if you go in the park, we'll be back towards the midway point. There's an entrance and exit to Peeler Road, and it's called DeKalb Avenue, I believe. And we'll be up on the hill, and right below us is the Zipline Treetop Quest area. So you can find us there. We were out there last weekend looking at it. There's a lot of activity out there now. So parking gets a little tight right around the pavilion we'll be at, but there's a parking lot right near that's within easy walking distance. We'll also be, if you can't find it when you get in there, give us a shout on 146.820. We'll have a talk in for that. We'll be going from noon to about dark to give us time to break down so we don't lose things in the dark. So we'll go from noon to 7:30 or so. Whenever it gets dark, we'll be breaking down. If you come, you'll be entitled to a commemorative memento, but you've got to come to find out what that is. So join us and you'll get that also. And we'll have a good time. And then Bill Perkins, KB4KFT, is putting this together for us. So we're gonna let him get done before dark so he can go home and recharge his batteries, because he'll be roving on Sunday, running around the state of Georgia. So thank you to him for putting that on. And then we'll work into field day possibly at a different site or maybe in that same park. We don't know yet. We're working on that. So but please do join us. It's an in-person event. Bring your mask. It's an outdoor event, so if we're far enough apart, you don't necessarily have to be wearing the mask the whole time. So just keep that in mind. We'll have snacks and drinks and some chairs. Maybe bring your lounge chair, your favorite lounge chair if you've got one. And we have a pavilion with a picnic table, and we set the radio, 1 or 2 radios up. And so for those of you who have stage fright, this is your chance to get out and get on the radio and give it a shout and give it a try. So we'll be using the W4DOC call sign for this event. So it should be a good time. We're also looking at possibly getting some sort of a Saturday breakfast or a Friday lunch bunch going again soon. So once we get that in place, we'll let you know and where and when, and give us some opportunities to get back to in-person gathering with the club members. So membership, if you haven't had a chance to renew your membership for the year, we're always happy to take your money, and it's a great way to support especially the repeaters in the club. They do take money to run, and we're going to hopefully in the next month we'll have a finance report and including a membership report. We do have money in the bank. We're doing okay. COVID really put a hurting on the club this past 12 months. So thank you for being here tonight. And do we have a program for next month yet?
Not yet, but I can tell you June is going to be on batteries.
Okay.
All about batteries, and just trying to slot someone in right into May.
Go to Facebook and join our Facebook page. You'll find some updates for the QSO party on there. We also have the IO group for emails, so that's a way to stay in touch with what's going on, and anything that changes, we'll try to post things, especially for the QSO party. We do expect it will be at Brook Run Park 8 to 12 that day. There's an outside chance for some reason, because the pavilion's a first come, first served there, that if we have to move, there's a pavilion right near it. So we shouldn't have an issue of finding the place. But if you get out there and you can't find us, just give us a shout on the radio. Or I think our contact information is on the website too for phone numbers. I'll make sure I include that on an update on the Facebook page in case you just can't reach us on the radio. So
DMR, we can listen to DM.
What's that?
Hit us on FM or DMR.
Yeah.
You mentioned the zip line.
Yes.
Can we use that as an in-fed?
We can try.
Light it up. Light her up.
And then, of course, we have our regular Sunday Night Net coming up 8 p.m. A couple nights from now, and so please do join us for that. Like I said, we've gotten the gremlins worked out at this point, so it's a clean operation now. We'll as we can, we'll put in, we'll pull new equipment back up, and if we run into a problem, we'll stop and take one step back and get it back to where it is. But we're good to go right now on the repeater. So just there's no linking for those of you that use 220 or Echo Link for the Sunday Night Net. That's still out at the moment. So, but we're trying to get that all that stuff hooked back up as soon as we can. So just bear with us, and thank you tonight, Lee, for bearing with us on not getting to you right away. We had one or two of those things to get through and went a little longer than we expected. So thank you for being with us.
No problem at all. I enjoyed it.
We enjoyed it. So do any other board members have anything?
I believe our president is due to be net op this Sunday.
Oh, is that this week? I'll double check.
Look for him on the air. I've got something quick. We're keeping videos of these Zooms. We're keeping them on YouTube. And if you go to YouTube and you do a search for Atlanta Radio Club, just for Atlanta Radio Club, you'll see our current videos, and there are actually some old videos that some other people have posted, including a big MFJ video from 2010 that was really good. So if you look for that, the meeting is again, the Zoom will be on there. It's got annotations on there. It's got a timeline on there, and Eric's still there. Thank you for doing that, Eric. And it's got it's got a summary of the meeting, and it's got a timeline so you can see which part started when. And so it's on the website, You'll see it there too. Enjoy. That's it for me.
All right. Well, I appreciate everybody being with us tonight. And once again, thank you to Lee for being the program presenter tonight. And it's about 9 o'clock. We'll leave this open if y'all want to chat. If not, we'll officially sign off the meeting, and we'll leave it open for those that might like to hang around and chat for a little bit here. I'll turn the recording off at that point, so that whatever you say won't get back to anybody that whether you're talking about a new radio that you don't want your wife to find out about or something like that. So what we talk about here stays here. So thank you everybody for joining us tonight, and y'all have a safe month. And if you can, please do join us for that commemorative item in 2 weekends out at the Georgia QSO party. Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you. Well done.
Good evening, everybody. 73.
Good night.